was one of the creative geniuses behind the 1980s hit Kids in the Hall. Now he and they are back. But what about those intervening years? What did he learn, and how has it changed him? This week, we find out. And hello, I'm Peter Mansbridge, one-on-one this week with Bruce McCullough in the Rivoli.
Of all places.
It's breathing this air again must bring back...
I do smell stale beer and the Parachute Club.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were big here in the early 80s as well.
Yeah.
What did this place mean for you?
Well, it was our creative home. It was a place that we were allowed to basically have the stage every Monday and do our thing. And it was the place where we first blundered, we floundered, and then we caught steam because we caught on to what we were doing here.
And what was that? I mean, what made you guys?
I think there was something, and I've been asked that question. There is something about our, we're the original nerds, I think. There's a lot of comedy that is about nerds, in a sense. And we were, I think, kind of outsiders. We all came, most of our parents drank. We had, terrible, blue-collar jobs or lower middle class. And I think we were sort of punks in a way. And we really asked ourselves and the audience the question of who are we? Do student loans matter? And we were kind of outsiders. And
outsiders or actually closer to real life than perhaps you even realized?
Well, yes. I mean, I think the thing that when an audience connected with us is our foibles and the fact that we are just trying to do our best in this world. And I think that our characters sort of did that. And as I sort of look back historically on a lot of them, I can understand it now. Of course, then we were just writing stuff that was our lives.
What is it about our comedy, Canadian comedy, that has made us so successful in that art form? I mean, you guys weren't the first.
No.
There obviously had been others. But you became part of a generation that kind of really lit the bonfires of Canadian comedy outside the borders of our country.
Well, because we're better. No, I mean...
Well, are we better?
Well,
maybe we are better.
The answer is actually that we would not say we're better. And for that reason, we are better. And I think that we as a Canadian, as Canadians, are quiet. We don't yell a lot. We're not red carpet people. We do the work. And we don't expect to get rewarded first. We get to get rewarded later. And we look at things and we judge things, and we have the behemoth, of the United States to look at, and we're the class clowns. And Canada, the class clowns are never the really successful, handsome, gorgeous athletes. They're the little weedy weirdos like us. And in a way, Canada is that in some way as it looks at the rest of the consumptive world. And I think that's kind of it.
And they see us as funny or nerdy or what? I mean, what is it that attracts us to them? In other words, the big American companies and networks that
why do they want us?
Yeah, why do they poach on Canadian comedians? What is it they're seeing that?
Well, two-part answer. One is for us, we were here at the Rivoli. We, in relative sort of obscurity, we were allowed to create our thing. The same way Nirvana in Seattle was allowed to figure out their thing without being poached in any way. And I think if we had either shot our show in Los Angeles, say, or done our thing in Los Angeles, we would have been taken by casting directors and taken by studios and taken apart before we were ready, essentially, to. And the other reason is we're better. Like, we are really good at comedy, so either we can create it inside our borders, or people go run shows in America, which happens to a lot of our top television talent, which is what I know.
Now, when they became interested in you, because I want to try and get at this, what makes us different than the Americans on a lot of different levels. But when you started making it in the States,
right,
and moved to the States, were there those people, those layers of sort of the in-between the artist and the audience that tried to change you?
I think so, and I mean, I think that's been my experience as I've done American television. I had a show on ABC a year and a half ago now, and there's a lot of layers. As an artist, it's not necessarily a Canadian answer, but as an artist, you don't want to have to explain what you're going to do, because sometimes you don't know. And in America, they want to know what you're going to do before you do it. So I think that's the hard part. When we went to Saturday Night Live, I worked as a writer there in the mid-'80s, and it was, you'd have to explain why your thing was funny, and that didn't obviously happen with the Kids in the Hall.
You have to sit there and explain why it was funny? They didn't think it was funny right away?
No, or and especially, I'm going to do a song about the Daves I know, and it's a bunch of guys named Dave. What's funny about that? Well, we think it's funny. So we have a certain kind of quiet bravado, I think. Now,
that level doesn't necessarily exist in this country, or it would if we could afford to have that level inside the business, or what?
Well, I don't think we're that way. I mean, I am like a granddaddy of comedy or of whatever now, and a lot of young Canadian comedians come down, and they're always impressed by the energy of Los Angeles or the energy of the entertainment industry there, and America is like the guy who takes you out and is all over you but doesn't call you back, and Canada is the guy who quietly will raise the baby and love it, but it doesn't present itself in that way. So I think that's the hard thing that certainly Canadians have going across the border. It seems like everything's happening, and then nothing really is happening.
The market seems to never end in the States for new talent, new comedic talent. Obviously they must get some of their own, but they look here, don't they? Like, are they on the hunt here all the time?
I think I think the way we look at the world uniquely makes us comedians, as it does with the English in a sense, which is sort of a similar kind of culture in some ways, that they're not arrogant. Not to say the Americans are arrogant, but they're all about success. Canadians are sort of harmonious people. They want to fit in. They don't want to, they're not about consumption. When you talk about being Canadian, it isn't about power generally. It's about the conversations of who we are and our people and the things we love. And it's not about power. It's about, culture in a sense.
But you must have learned something in the States too. I mean, we've been tending to talk as if they have nothing to offer, but in fact, I assume they have a lot to offer.
Well, they have a lot to offer, which is Canada can learn from in a sense. I mean, the interesting thing about being in America is they will, the first week on or the first show I did on Saturday Night Live, Lorne Michaels sent me into Oprah Winfrey's dressing room to try to pitch her on a sketch she'd already said no to. And she thought it was probably racist, and I said, okay, I'll go do it, and she wouldn't do it. And I said, well, why'd you send me in there? And he said, well, you're Canadian, I knew, she wouldn't hit you, she might throw you out, which she did.
He's Canadian.
Yes, and he's Canadian.
But I guess nobody remembers that down there.
No, it's after a certain amount of time. You have to come back every few years.
We got to take a break, and I want to carry on this part of the conversation because I find it interesting. More than interesting, I find it fascinating. We'll be back one-on-one with Bruce McCullough right after this. And we're back one-on-one with Bruce McCullough. Is it true that Kids in the Hall, the actual name, came from an old Sid Caesar routine?
Yes. Well, not a routine. There was a group of guys that would sit outside Jack Benny's hallway, and they would pitch jokes. And when something bombed, apparently it was like, okay, it was one of the Kids in the Hall who did that. They were the upstart writers who would always be trying to pitch jokes. So it seemed to fit for us, I think.
It's it does fit, but it's kind of funny actually where you grabbed it from.
Right.
Because you're going back into what, 50s comedy?
Yes, for sure.
American sketch comedy.
Yep.
Live television.
Yeah.
What does that say, or does it say anything that you pulled it off?
Well, it may have been accidental, but probably what it really was is, we love comedy, and especially certain factions. Dave and Kevin, the members of the troupe, love almost the vaudeville part, the entertainer part, the old comedy where Jackie Gleason, live, energetic comedy, and I think we all do, and I think it's part of that.
Does an audience still go for that?
I think an audience wants something exciting. They want something juicy and something that rocks. And you asked us about our appeal earlier, and I think that is part of what our appeal is, and it's sagging as we sag. But there's an electric energy or almost a rock and roll energy as it's been described, and we use rock music in our show. People always want that. People always want theater. They want some experience, and so that's why they always want some comedy.
And they want pushing the boundaries, which you guys are known for.
I guess we are.
But that is something that we do as a Canadian thing, the boundary pushing.
Yes, it's odd because we are quiet people, but we're snipers. We will come out of the grass and we will shoot you. And that's what the guy who's waiting, who thinks that the high school athlete is kind of an idiot, you're just waiting. And that's what we do. But when we come out, it can be savage.
Tell me more about the American experience that you had that has helped you, that has taught you. Because how many years? You spent a good...
I've almost been there 10 years now.
And what has that meant for you, aside from, I assume it's meant a lot of this?
Right. By this you mean cocaine? That's money, right, sir?
What has it meant? What has it done to your art form? When you got back together with the kids for this, aside from being older, what were you bringing to the table, those of you who'd spent time in the States?
Well, I think if you have to explain yourself, and I've directed 4 feature films, so I have sort of that kind of experience under my belt. But you learn a certain kind of just a craft, really. I mean, there was a big craft that goes on there, and certainly storytelling and character and sort of those things, and how to kind of run a ship a little bit. I think when we were starting out the CBC, we were jerks, because we didn't know what we were doing. We were just, they should Velcro all the clothes because we have to do fast changes. Well, they can't Velcro all the clothes in the CBC warehouse, and then what will Anne of Green Gables do with Velcroed clothes? So it's a little bit about that, but it's a muscular place. I mean, and I think that's the good and the bad thing about America. You go in a room there, as I've sold 7 or 8 TV pilots, and they will say yes or no. Or they'll say, nice to see you, and then they'll say no as you're in the hallway. And then they will want to make it that day, or they will want to make a deal. They'll start. So the muscular part of the industry, we could learn a little bit about that, declaring ourselves, but sometimes America will go away just as fast, and the thing will go away just as fast.
You talked about boundary pushing, which is, what you guys are known for, but one assumes there has to be a limit to how far those boundaries can be pushed when you're in those kind of negotiations and discussions with network executives. I mean, did you lose some of that in that time, not just whether it was in the States, but in dealing with Canadian networks now? Is it tougher to push boundaries?
I think it is. I think we went through a time, we were kind of in a first golden age of television, in a sense, or in my life of television. And we could kind of do essentially what we wanted. They weren't crazy about Dr. Seuss Bible or things like that were really button pushing, and of course there's certain language you just can't use. But we never really swear that much anyway. It was more, so we got to do most of what we wanted when we were on the CBC. I think sometimes we said we were censored, but that was partially a pre-negotiation to them censoring us the next time. And having worked at Fox and even Comedy Central and ABC, the things that we're allowed to do here now, even with this miniseries we've done, would not be allowed to do there. But we are in a golden age of television, I think, again, which the CBC certainly, I think, and CTV and all the other places here can be part of again, if they want.
What would you want to do that you've perhaps held back from trying to do on television?
Well, I mean, I'm obsessed. I'm a humanist. I'm obsessed with people and their struggles. So everything I ever write is about people trying to figure out their lives and solve their problems and do better, and they have shame or they have a mistake they made. And that's a story that I want to keep telling, it seems. So it's not like I haven't been able to do, a show about nudists. It's just I always want to do more because I'm a work pig. I want to just keep doing it.
And in which art form? Because you have had a varied career within television and feature film. Is there one area that you gravitate more than others, or is there one area that you yet left to explore? Sports broadcasting, news, what is it?
I move my head too much for sports. I'd like to be a weatherman, but you have to be pretty good looking for that. No, I love television. It took me a few years, because I directed some films, to kind of go, I'm really built for television. And, some of the best work in the world, I think, is being done on television now. A lot of good shows. Most of it is a cable in the States. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves The Sopranos, and there's a lot of shows like that.
Because they don't seem to hesitate in pushing boundaries.
No. I don't think we do either. I think sometimes, there isn't a mandate in ourselves. We don't discuss what we want. If I had lunch with some people, executives at Fox, a few months back, and they'll tell me what they want, what kind of shows they want, what they're looking for. I think in Canada, people kind of wait for things to come in. So they're not sometimes at an executive level having the conversations about who we should be and what we want and what do we want corporately, I think.
We're going to take our last break. Time's flying by here, but we're going to be back for Final Thoughts, one-on-one with Bruce McCullough, right after this. And we're back for Final Thoughts, one-on-one with Bruce McCullough. Let's tie it back to that stage,
okay,
to the Rivoli, and bring it forward from there to here. What still resonates today that resonated the first time you were on that stage?
Well, to get it right, I'm obsessed with ideas, and to take an idea and put it somewhere and watch it get bigger and watch people respond to it, and it's not just about you, but it's about them, that seems like a well that never empties for me.
When you're on stage, you get immediate reaction. You can tell very quickly whether
right.
it's working or not. That must make it so much harder when you're filming, when you're recording, when you're putting together a television program, knowing whether or not it works.
It's very hard. And that's why, being with the Kids in the Hall is great, because you have each other in the scene generally. So you feel, the scene feels alive in a sense, because you have the energy flowing sort of back and forth between you. Sometimes not necessarily. When I've guested on other things, you feel a little bit like a part of this machine, and you're the carburetor, but you're not, So, and it's a different pursuit. So you have to keep it alive somehow, and that's the hard part.
You guys are far past the point where you feel any hesitation in telling one of the others whether it's working or not?
Yeah, and we in fact enjoy it. As a family, we like to go, no, Scott, not your best one. But we're kinder now, and that's why it's easier to work together. It's faster, because we don't have to have, we started in our 20s, men in our 20s, a lot of ego attached to every decision and everything. And as you get a little bit older, you go, oh, other people need oxygen too. Other people are just as smart as me. And I think that's the harmony. That's the true harmony, not just in the troupe, but working with other people.
Is it a collaborative effort on the writing? I mean, do you all sit around a table and work out a sketch?
Yes,
how does that work?
I sit there, and my assistant comes over, and I do all the work, sir. No. We talk about ideas, and then they come together, and we sit in a room, and then maybe a recipe card goes up, and we laugh at something, and then, it evolves from there, and then someone will take it away and kind of bring more of it, and then we'll beat it up. We're good at beating up material, and I think that's probably why we've done so much stuff together.
Can you see who's playing who right away?
Pretty much. Sometimes we fight over that, but we sort of know what each other does in a good way now, and I think it's pretty obvious. Although ever so often we flip a coin. I'll play the fat guy. You play the pizza delivery woman with Alzheimer's, and but generally we know.
When you closed out the first run, so to speak, of this, did you ever think there'd be another one?
No, I thought I would never do another television show. I thought we were done, and I think that was just sheer exhaustion. As I would lie in my apartment, my ears would ring and the bed would spin just from sheer exhaustion of all that was going on. And of course, when you're young, you don't realize what you're going to know when you're old, which is the gang you're with is pretty great. I learned that even early on, going to Saturday Night Live, and they weren't as good to me as the Kids in the Hall. I thought there'd be all these great people. So it did take some time to truly appreciate.
What do you mean they weren't as good? In what way?
They weren't as funny. To me, they weren't as funny. The people weren't, the writers were fine, but there's 17 of them talking about one joke, and we just did it. So we just tried to fill up the show and somehow filled it up. So we were more instinctive, and we don't talk that much about comedy or the theory of comedy. We just sort of do it and go, that one doesn't work, that's too long. So I think at least I learned from working with other people that these guys are in some integral way my brothers.
Now this is an 8-part series, and obviously, decisions about the future will depend, one assumes, on how well it does and how you guys feel about it yourselves. But what is the next step? When you look down the road, what do you see?
Well, we don't, and that's I think the great thing about us. We have no, affiliation to our career. It's just we always say we're 5 smart guys, but together we're one dumb guy, and we never go, oh, we have our show on the air, we should go tour again. We just do whatever instinctively we do, and for better or worse. And I think for us now, we're happy to get here. We're happy, CBC was great. We're happy to have put something into culture and something that we really love. And then we haven't talked really about what's next.
What about this?
Oh, we'll always do some live performing. I mean, that's when we started writing this, and when we, before our last tour, we wrote all new material. We were on a stage this small, and that's where it comes from. That's kind of our blues, in a sense. And I think we'll always do a little bit of that.
And does it give you a different adrenaline than anything else?
No,
doing this?
Adrenaline's always the same, even as you get old.
Well, you guys don't look old to me, I got to tell you.
It's the face puller, sir. There.
Oh,
yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
You've got that number. Do you? Thanks for this.
Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you as well. We'll be back one-on-one in 7 days.